Tell me the story about this. The P.T. Barnum. Did you end up? You must have done a bunch of research and read about him.
He's an amazing character. He was a true pioneer, a bit of a disruptor. Like, I think of him as a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk. He saw the world completely differently to anybody else. And he had this idea to change entertainment. Art at that time was kind of stuffy. It was opera. It was meant to elevate and meant to civilize. And he was like, you know, screw that. Let's just have some fun. Let's make it for everybody. He really invented pop culture. So it was, first of all, in the form of a museum, and then it became the circus and the greatest show on earth. And he really redefined marketing. He redefined entertainment as we know it today.
But after a series of show-stopping musical numbers, this social climbing con man will be met with lifelong success and happiness?
Maybe you are a fraud. Maybe it was just about making a buck.
Uh-oh, they're onto you. Quick, do a hat trick. Witness this real-life Willy Wonka. But instead of selling kids candy, he's selling kids tickets to laugh at the Oompa Loompas, where the tragedy of these people's exploitation is brushed aside.
Well, they're laughing anyway, kids. Might as well get paid.
To spend more time with two perfect physical specimens.
Face.
Listen, there's a lot that led up to that. There's a lot that led up to that. A lot of ugly face before the 2 seconds of pretty face.
So do you switch from the face to the actual close-up shot?
It's definitely a conscious choice. It starts with because it's uncomfortable, right? And then as soon as I felt that lift happen, you fall into
that was it.
And then as soon as you drop, it's like, shit, let me down.
I want to see that tape.
If I did that, my face would be like,
you wouldn't be able to switch it.
No way. I'd be laughing hysterically.
I'm frosty. Far away from the North Pole, but you know I'm a jolly happy soul. Not Jack Frost, not Olaf, not a reindeer named Rudolph. I'm Frosty.
Never enough, never, never, never enough, never, never. Getting back together, your friends talk to my friends, talk to my friends, talk to me. I hate this movie. Hello, welcome back to Showgays.
Starting off strong.
We are all three in different locales today. RJ... Molly and I are just normally where we are. RJ is in the far-flung tropics of Phoenix. And by tropics, I mean desert.
Desert.
How is it?
It's fine. Nothing has changed from my family's home. There's boxes everywhere. You know, there's snacks in every room. Every room has a pile of snacks. I am not joking. Every room. Which is funny now because Adam won't let me eat in the bedroom. And I've always been like, I'm not eating on the bed. I'm like on the chair. And now I'm fully seeing what he means.
Great. Molly, how are you?
Oh, good. I was going to ask what the temperature is there, RJ.
It is 64 degrees. So it was very nice out. Still a light jacket, you know.
Yeah, I'm jealous, but at least it's not tormenting me. It was 50 degrees here in Madison yesterday, which was so exciting, and now it's 20 again. So.
Oh no, it's been 40 in Chicago.
It hasn't dropped down here yet. Oh yeah, it's 46 right now. So.
But all the snow has melted, and so everywhere is wet. And Friedrich hates walking in the wet.
You should get him booties. I did that for Sam in the last few years of his life because he got more persnickety about the cold weather. And he didn't love the booties, but he liked them better than the snow and ice and salt and stuff.
He does prance when he has the boots on. It's very funny.
Yeah.
Full Bambi.
Well, I'm well, thank you.
Adam had the day off today.
How were you, Adam? Yes. Did you celebrate George Washington and Abraham Lincoln's birthdays?
Nothing but respect for my presidents, which do include Eisenhower, Nixon, Reagan, first Bush, second Bush.
Club,
Ford.
another club, club,
Coolidge.
another show.
Another Bush.
No, it's fine. I didn't do anything. RJ had to go to the airport this morning at 5:30 in the morning. So I got home, and then my mom had to get to her train station at 8. We had to leave here at 8. So by the time I got back, I was like, well, I'm not gonna go to sleep for an hour and then get back, and you know what I mean? So I just stayed up, had a cup of coffee, took mom to the train station, came back, and then passed out, another club, passed out, and then woke up at noon, and I was like, well, I guess I'll start my day. This week I have the arduous task of succinctly summarizing the plot of The Greatest Showman. So RJ, if you could tell me when to start.
Adam, this is your 1-minute summary of The Greatest Showman, and your time starts now.
Phineas Taylor Barnum is the son of a poor tailor in love with the local rich girl named Charity. They have 2 children, but a humble life in New York City. He is terminated from his job as a shipping clerk when the company goes bankrupt, but cons his way to using the shipping vessel's deeds as collateral for a new theater space which will hold Barnum's American Museum. It's just essentially a wax museum. His daughters give him the idea to have living people as part of the show, and he employs a number of people on the outskirts of society for different, quote, abnormalities. Although tawdry, the popularity of the venue allows him to earn success, but it isn't enough because critics don't like what he's done. He pairs with a theater producer named Carlisle to tour with Jenny Lind, the great opera star from Sweden, around the country, neglecting his business and his family. When that falls through, he relearns the meaning of, I don't know, being true to yourself. There's a fire, his theater burns down, but then he uses tents. And yes, this movie sucks, but Zendaya is okay. That's all I have.
And that's 1 minute.
Nice.
Look at that. We've hit a nice balance of plot and snark.
I believe, so that we don't get Twittered about it, I believe it's Zendaya.
Yeah,
Zendaya.
It's Zendaya.
Yes, okay.
I apologize.
As Michi.
As Zendaya,
Rue.
as Michi.
As Mary Jane. MJ.
As everything, hopefully. If she could just be in all movies, that would be preferable.
Is there any big thing in the plot that I missed? Like, what is the plot of this movie? This was genuinely my question.
I think you talked about the plot that had the most screen time, maybe.
There are B and C plots, but I think you covered the main plot.
Yeah.
And listener, she said B and Z plots, as in a range, B to Z.
Yeah,
Zeta.
there are so many plots. We cover the rest of the alphabet.
B to Zendaya.
Yes, B to Zendaya.
So I'm going to start, since I essentially brought this musical to the table this week because I am a masochist. And my relationship to this musical is RJ and I saw this in theaters. We did not go opening day, but we went in it was a Christmas release. So we went at Christmas time around there. And it is I think it's the first movie, let alone movie musical, that I have ever considered walking out of.
Wow.
Because I disliked it so immensely. And I can't even tell you, I think it was early on that I was like, this is not for me. But I don't remember which part specifically, but I was like, I'm not going to, because we also had AMC A-List or whatever, or was it Movie Pass back then? I don't remember, whichever.
It was Movie Pass back then.
So we were seeing it for free, basically. So I was like, I could have just left, but I was like, no, I'll stick it out because it's a musical. And
It's a musical. Yeah, we really tried very hard to give it as many benefits of doubts.
And I would like to say that when I saw it, when RJ and I rewatched it the other night, I was like, I went into it and I was like, I want to I don't think I'm going to like it again. But I want to see if like maybe I'm like, oh, I was a little harsher on that than it. And no, I don't think it was, but that's fine. So RJ, is your story basically the same as mine, your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to add that was our first dine-in theater experience. It was not very good.
It was not.
It was one of those dine-in theaters that I was like, I think one of the first ones. So it was really old. Like the screens weren't. It was not redone. The screens weren't updated. It was so bright. Like
it was really bright.
And what's funny is that I think we watched Cats in kind of like I think the same theater.
No, we watched Cats. No, we watched Cats in one of the new ones that they had redone.
Okay, but I just remember it being so bright that I was like, I was already kind of like thrown aback by like, okay, what is this dine-in experience gonna be like? I don't remember what I had. I think it was nachos. It was fine. I just remember leaving it being like, at least it was dine-in, but the dine-in wasn't even that good, and I don't think we drank enough. I don't remember being
I don't believe I had a drink, which is really the unfortunate situation here.
So sure that all of our listeners need to know exactly what you ate while you watched this movie.
Absolutely. That is my perspective. Because at least I could have like the food to be a silver lining, but it wasn't even, I didn't even have that. So.
And then the only other thing I want to say about our experience of this movie was that like, everyone we knew in Orlando loved this movie.
Our Facebook feeds were full of long posts of
I knew people who went and saw it multiple times and then also saw it when they redid it as like a sing-along and like went and saw it then. And I was like...
And I think we didn't have any... We didn't know any criticism at that point, so we were like, I mean, everyone just said it was really good, so let's try it. Let's watch it.
Yeah. Molly... what is your... You hadn't seen this, right? This was your first time?
I had never seen it before. So I knew that it came out because it got promoted a lot, and I knew it was about P.T. Barnum, but that was about it. I had heard the song "This Is Me" before, but that was the only song I had heard. But I feel like I should give my take as well on it, because you guys just gave so many opinions. And you know, I have a professional obligation because I am a theater scholar who deals with disability studies as well, that I want to give the disclaimer up top that I have very complicated feelings about how disability is portrayed in this film. So I want to put that like as a pin before I say my next comment, which is that I enjoyed this movie.
Molly!
No.
I'm
turning the Zoom off. I'm kicking Molly out of the chat, and me and RJ are going to go back to old Showgays, and it's just going to be us two who talk about it.
I didn't love everything about it. I thought that they didn't pick the best plot lines to be following, but I enjoyed the time watching it and felt it was a competently made movie. And I watched it thinking, what is Adam's problem with this movie? Because I don't know why you would feel so strongly that it is terrible.
Well, this is my question. I'll get into it when we talk about the movie, but okay. Well, that's very interesting. I definitely respect you less now. I can definitely say that.
As a person, as an intellectual, you respect me less.
As a woman, the whole, all of it.
Oh, yeah. Adams is gobsmacked.
I am gobsmacked. Well, let's talk about, I don't know, the movie, I guess. So, this movie is directed by Michael Gracey. It is his first movie. So, he had done a lot of, like, music videos and commercial work. The screenplay is by Jenny Bix and Bill Condon, who famously directed Dreamgirls. The story is by Jenny Bix. It is produced by Lawrence Mark, Peter Chernin, and Jenno Topping. Jenno Topping me. Am I right? Great. It stars Hugh Jackman as P.T. Barnum, Zac Efron as Philip Carlyle, Michelle Williams as Charity Barnum, I guess, and Rebecca Ferguson as... what is her name? Hold on, let me scroll.
Jenny Lind.
Jenny Lind, yes, that's right. a real person, and Zendaya as made-up person, and hold on. Where are my notes? Zendaya plays Ann Wheeler, a made-up person. The cinematography is by Seamus McGarvey. It is edited by Tom Cross, Robert Duffy, Joe Hutching, Michael McCusker, John Pohl, and Spencer Susser. This movie has 6 editors. So
wow,
interesting.
Most edited film in Showgays history.
Until we do Bohemian Rhapsody, and then it's most edited film. Music by John Debney and Joseph Trapanese, but the songs specifically are by Pasek and Paul from Dear Evan Hansen that we talked about in January. It was done by Lawrence Mark Productions, Turner Entertainment, TSG Entertainment, but it was distributed by 20th Century Fox, which is now, again, owned by Disney. The release date it went wide December 20th, 2017. It has a running time of 105 minutes. Its budget was $84 million, and its box office was $434.9 million, making it the third highest grossing movie musical of all time.
Wow.
Okay.
Do we know what the other top 2 are?
No, I didn't look it up. I could, but I didn't feel like it.
Let's wildly speculate.
I'm going to say, I feel like it's always newer movies are highest grossing because they don't count for inflation.
There's just more reach. Yeah.
Maybe La La Land, since it got the Oscar nomination.
La La Land. What's another one that was, I don't know. What other ones have been big that have been popular? Or, box office smashes, but more, recent.
Chicago?
It could
That's not
be.
super recent, but...
Yeah, I don't know. There's no way to know, unfortunately.
Unfortunately,
on the big
we'll
wide
just
internet,
never know.
there's just no way to know. So this movie came about because Bill Condon and Lawrence Mark were the producers of the 2009 Oscars ceremony in which Hugh Jackman was the host. And they commented to each other, he's just like P.T. Barnum. And then they were like, wait, we should make a musical about P.T. Barnum and Hugh Jackman is the star.
Based on their personal experience of viewing P.T. Barnum, they were able to say...
I mean, they're 2 gay men in theater, so I'm assuming they have, listened to Barnum a bunch, the 1980 musical that, ran for a couple years on Broadway. That's my guess.
Oh, I didn't even know that existed. Still not a representation of P.T. Barnum, the real human being, but I guess that their imagination, their version of P.T. Barnum.
He's such a showman. He's, one could say, the greatest showman.
I don't think one could say that.
So then at that Oscar ceremony, Jenny Bix, who's the screenwriter of this film, she was one of the staff writers for that ceremony. And if you don't remember, I just watched it. I can put a clip in of that opening Oscars thing, but he does a number in which he the bit is in his garage. He made little sets representing each of the 10 best picture movies represented. And it's really stupid. It's fine. It's not something that I would be like, this man should lead a movie musical about P.T. Barnum. But okay, go off, Queen.
I am a wrestler. I am alone. My role is outcast. My heart is bypassed, and yet I have grown from a slumdog with nothing. I milled my button. I ironed all my men and frosted my Nixon, 'cause I am Hugh Jackman, and I've waited so long, and no recession can stop my confession or silence my song. These are the Oscars, and this is my dream. I am a wrestler. I'll rent the reader. I'm
This literally started in development almost immediately after. So like 2009 was the Oscars. Like 6 months later, they started working on this project. Hugh Jackman was on board from the beginning, and then they got Pasek and Paul on board, I think in like 2013 or something like that, 2013, 2014. And then they had this like big meeting that they were going to like fly to 20th Century Studios and like present it to like get greenlit and stuff for like producers and whatever. And in that like read through, sing through, whatever you want to call it, of like the music, the person playing Philip Carlyle was Jeremy Jordan, which I thought you would find very interesting, Molly.
Wow. What could have been, Molly?
The idea.
Now, more interestingly,
you could have had that.
The day before this like sing through was to happen, Hugh Jackman had nose surgery to have like a cancerous thing removed from his nose.
I had no idea.
So his like nose was stitched up, and the doctor was like, you can't sing for like 6 weeks because like also Hugh Jackman is a very nasal singer, which is that's fine, but he was like, you can't sing. So they made Jeremy Jordan sing both roles at this sing through, a person who is decidedly not in this movie in any way whatsoever, which I think is like crazy
rude.
But then, like, I guess during it, what is that stupid song? Hold on, let me look. I shouldn't say
the bar song where they have to sing to each other?
No, From Now On, which is the song at the end.
Oh.
The last song, Hugh Jackman was, like, moved to sing live and then realized he was, like, gushing blood halfway through the song, but, like, continued to do it. And everyone was so moved, they felt like they needed to, like, bring this to life. So that's how it got its funding.
His passion. He was so passionate that he bled. My God.
Actors should all be put to death.
Oh my God.
And like stop like romanticizing actors being in pain and like doing like it's unhealthy. You wouldn't be like, oh, this marketing presentation is way better because this guy's a nosebleed during it. Don't apply that same standard to actors, please, everyone.
What is going on? Anyway, so that's how that's what happened, and then like Zac Efron got on board, Zendaya got on board, and then it basically was just made.
I could have had Jeremy Jordan and Zendaya together. Oh my God. Okay.
Yep.
The movie playing inside Molly's mind is amazing.
The movie spent 219 days in theaters. 219 days. It finally left theaters on July 26th, 2018. So like 6 straight months in the cinemas, which is wild. Now they did have the like re-release like in March, I think, like when they started doing like the sing-alongs, or maybe it was like April, whatever. So that was the thing that helped like
gotta
push
get
it
those
as well.
BFAs in the theaters, you know. Gotta get the Milliken class of 2018 on there to.
But in terms of movies that never hit number 1 in the American domestic box office, this is the 14th highest grossing movie. So like it never hit 1 in any of its weeks, but like it just kept. It was like it like debuted at 4 and then like held there for a few weeks because that was when Last Jedi came out, and then like basically once the music started like being pushed, it like went up to like number 2 was its top spot, which is crazy. Which just doesn't really happen. Fun people that could have been in this movie. Jenny Lind was written with Anne Hathaway in mind. Now, you may not remember, I just watched it, but Anne Hathaway is also featured in that 2009 Oscars opening performance. Yes. She plays Nixon in his Frost Nixon bit.
Wait, but this was a different year. Was it her and James Franco that then hosted the Oscars
That was
together?
later,
That was
That
later.
was later, yes.
And that was like what made everybody decide they were sick of Anne Hathaway, right? Was like that Oscars performance, I believe. Am I remembering
It
correctly?
started there because I think
Okay.
she ended up winning. I think like a couple years later after that.
Yeah, it was her speech where she said it came true, that everyone was like, well, you don't deserve this or good things, which is a very normal reaction the internet always has.
Mm-hmm.
Other people that could have been Jenny Lind include Carey Mulligan or Elliot Page, which are...
Wow.
Carey Mulligan, I see, gives a very similar energy to... Or no, I guess Carey Mulligan would make more sense actually as Charity.
Charity, yeah.
Yeah.
But then, I guess Rebecca Ferguson isn't known for being a singer either, but I feel like neither
No,
of
but
these
she is
people
known
are.
for being
new.
Swedish.
She was like,
So,
she
good for her.
loved bringing that up. And she was fairly new, right? Like this was kind of like one of her big early roles.
I did not go deep into her filmography. I think she's fine in the movie. I do think it's sucks for this voice girl the girl who sings her song is from The Voice. So go off NBC's The Voice.
This is the voice.
Yeah, so Michael Gracey, the director of this film, said this movie is similar to West Side Story, Mary Poppins, and The Sound of Music, and I would like to say I don't think he's ever seen those three films.
Truly, how dare you?
Those movies had music. Oh, that's the
that's the through line. And then just for fun, just for context, put this in historical perspective. The week this movie opens, Ferdinand, about the animated movie about the bull, that was number 5 at the box office.
Yes,
Greatest
John Cena plays the bull.
John Cena the bull. The Greatest Showman was number 4. Pitch Perfect 3. That was in 3rd place. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. That was number 2. And Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, was number 1. So that was where we were at the time.
So wait, did this come out the same weekend as the Star Wars movie, or it was like Star Wars was just still on top by the time The Greatest Showman came out?
This was the 2nd week for Star Wars.
Gotcha.
I think Star Wars came out like the 18th.
Because that'd be pretty wild. I mean, they obviously had a big budget for Greatest Showman, so it'd be pretty wild to decide to put it against Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Well, and that was the thing, is like everyone was like, well, this movie's going to die on the vine because it's opening against, like, the whole season will be dominated by Star Wars. It's not going to do anything. And then, like, basically just people loved it so much that, and the music specifically, that, like, that helped propel the narrative continuously until July of the next year. So I have no further things to talk about in terms of history regarding this film, so I think we should move on to our discussion of the actual film itself.
Let's do it.
So I want to start by saying I do not know specifically why I do not like this movie. I cannot narrow down. I think there are things that I can see as like objectively not. This movie doesn't excel in. That I have seen other movie musicals do the same thing, and I give them a pass. And for some reason, I do not feel that way about this movie. So during this conversation, I think I'd like to like kind of finesse and figure it out and hone in on like what are my actual issues with it, because right now I just generally think it's bad, but I can't really say why specifically.
Yeah, your eyes are just so red. You can't see past the just the guttural reaction that you have to it.
Yeah, this movie gave me pink eye.
Is
that what you're saying?
A
No,
sty.
you've been crying because you were so moved by it. So your
Yes.
eyes are red
So
from
moved.
that.
Just the inspiring story of Phineas.
Can I ask, I know we're going to talk about this later, but just as like a comparison point, do you like Moulin Rouge?
Okay, so I do not like Moulin Rouge. We did do Moulin Rouge on the podcast. I do think Moulin
Original
Rouge
cast.
is a much better film than this film. And I think I personally do not like Baz Luhrmann's style. That is just like my personal, it doesn't vibe for me. So that could be a big part of it, because I think a lot of this film like draws inspiration from that kind of thing.
Do you like, I'm trying to think of any other examples, but like very current pop music style musicals?
Hamilton, I think, is like the most.
Yeah,
the
I mean,
only
Hamilton's
one.
obviously a very different
But I think,
experience.
No, because I think I like Next to Normal, but that's not. It's
That's a
not
little bit more like pop
juxtaposing the
rock.
time and
Yeah.
which I think this movie is trying to do, and I don't think it super does well. I think the thing that makes like Hamilton interesting in terms of like the music versus the setting is like it's so juxtaposed, but it's with intention. Whereas like this one, they talked about how they like wanted specifically like a poppier sound, like a more current sound, quote, because they were like, I shouldn't say quote when it's not a quote, but they were like, this is misinformation. But they were like, because we wanted to show how ahead of his time P.T. Barnum was, which like,
What?
yes, that is real. That part is real. They were like, we wanted to like really bring forth that like he was ahead of his time and really progressive or whatever.
Their genuine motivation
opinion of him
in making this movie was like to memorialize how progressive P.T. Barnum was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ooh, y'all.
Yeah.
It's giving like when you are so invested in the prompt that you're just fully eating up like, wow. And it's just like full tunnel visioned into like.
Yeah.
Not even. I invented the prompt and chose not to engage in anything that would tell me about what the prompt should be. I assume they just like actively avoided all information about who P.T. Barnum was in his life in order to have come to the conclusion that the movie we should make is about what a great guy he was.
Or like found one thing and like he created this and then just.
Or
like,
maybe
that's where we stop.
Watch that musical from the 80s, I guess, and then they were like, this must be factual. Let's go with this.
Yeah.
I feel like now we have to, I wish now I had engaged with that musical ahead of time because I'm very curious now how that portrays him. Should we?
I saw that Barnum was a little more historically accurate than this, but it still took like creative license and liberties, which obviously anything is going to do anyway. But I think this one, I don't care. Okay, I want to be clear. P.T. Barnum was like many historical figures, like very complex and nuanced, and like we can have that conversation. That is them kind of like sanitizing him isn't really my issue with this movie. Like, I don't think it's great, but like musicals do that generally anyway. So like that doesn't bother me. That's not the part of this movie that like frustrates me. I think my biggest issue is like everything seems very surface. I think if this movie came out and it was like a television movie musical, I would be like, oh, this was great. What a great time I had. Because I do think like the pacing is good. I think like the way the songs are shot are like at least visually interesting and hold your attention. And like as a piece of entertainment, I am like objectively entertained by it. Like I can watch it and be like, okay, yeah. But I think like once you start to think more analytically and like critically about this movie, I just don't think like any of it really holds up, and a lot of it feels like very neutered and watered down, and like a committee of board members was like, well, at around the 48-minute mark, we do need a rousing anthem for the freaks to sing, and then we can never see them again for 45 more minutes of this movie. Like, it just, like, there are things about this movie that I'm like, you didn't choose anything to actually talk about. Like, there are there are like 3 plots, but there are like 7 themes in this movie, and it doesn't actually sink its teeth into any of them. And it could be like interesting if they actually like talked about like how interesting P.T. Barnum was and like how kind of complex he was, or if they really like wanted to go with this like Carlisle and Anne story and be like, completely made up, by the way, like not true at all. But like, if you really want to be like interracial relationships in 18 whatever, like that could be interesting. That they don't really do anything with that either. They have like one scene where someone's like, she's not white. And it's like, yeah, but it's Zendaya and she's like half white anyway. So what are we really arguing about here? Or also we could talk about
hold on. Wait. I don't think the conclusion should be Zendaya is mixed so nobody would care if she dated a white guy in the 1800s.
More my issue is that they set this up as like her and the guy that she like does trapeze with is her brother,
twin
but they
brother.
don't look like anything alike whatsoever, which is very frustrating. Not that people have to look alike when they're twin brother and sister. However, like it still feels like they're leaning into the like, well, she has to be the romantic lead of the situation, so she does have to be more fair skinned.
Oh, yeah.
That frustrates me.
Does it say that they're twins? I think I missed that.
It could be twins. I know they're brother and sister for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're twins.
Because, I mean, certainly people in the same family can end up with very different skin tones, or they could have had a different parent, or, anyway.
That's very true. I'm probably going to cut all that. But, so I don't get canceled again. But also
we canceled you a lot during the Wiz episode.
We
That's
can't
true.
keep up. We can't keep up.
But also, like the like people with disabilities or like whatever, it also doesn't really do anything with that either, because sorry to blow this information on you, the guy who plays Tom Thumb, who like in the movie, if you don't, his name is mentioned like once, but like he's like the short one in the group, he's like the little person. Mm-hmm. That actor was on his knees in these shots, and they CGI'd him to be shorter than he actually is.
Wait, so he is a little person, but he's not.
He is a little person, but not little enough for the movie.
Yes.
So he still had to be on his knees.
So the actor's like 127 centimeters tall, and like the real Tom Thumb, who was 4 years old, by the way, that's real. He was 4 years old, was 107 centimeters.
Okay,
and like,
well, so everyone was 4 years old, but you mean when he was first put into Barnum's
Yes.
He was 4 years old. Yeah.
As
like
a performer.
in the movie, it's like, oh, he's like an adult, or like, I don't know, maybe you're led to believe he's like 16 or something. Like he's like, the actor himself is 22, but like you kind of aren't really understood what age he's supposed to be. They also dubbed his voice. That's not even his voice, and then they like CGI'd his lips to match the like speech.
Okay.
This movie is bonkers. Like, this movie makes no sense. And I just wish it, like, had a vision. This is why I was like, I think Cats is better. Because while I can disagree with what Tom Hooper thought Cats is, which is not what that he made, at least he was like, here's a singular point of view. This is what I think Cats is. It's like when you go see a local production of a musical and you're like, well, the concept was bad. Like, we don't actually need to set into the woods in like a playground. Like, I think it's a little rote. Where like
Adam coming for an actual production of Into the Woods that we watch.
Where like this is like not doing anything. And it's just like, why are we just floundering listening to like Pasek and Paul songs? I don't know. I have a lot about
Okay. We gotta let's take a deep breath. Because there's been a lot of information that's come
I know,
out.
Molly. It's just like, I just received a lot of info.
So I want to respond to the like Tom Thumb thing, thinking this through from a disability lens. So Tom Thumb, the real guy, Tom, who was Barnum's like centerpiece performer and like later became kind of a business partner to him, was of remarkably short stature. So he was smaller than most little people are. So I guess I can see the thought of like, well, we are going to cast a little person, but we want him to look a little bit more historically accurate.
Sorry, but like, this is the thing that the movie was like, this needs to be historically accurate. Like, nothing else about this movie, they were like, oh, let's worry about historical accuracy. They're living in this mansion that could not have existed in like 1830. This dilapidated mansion that they saw as children in like 1815 that literally looks like it walked out of the French like Riviera, and they're like, oh, let's live here in Connecticut. Boo! Boot! Sorry.
I've never felt more like Adam is yelling at me when he is.
I am yelling
when it's about The Greatest Showman.
When I say you, I mean everyone that has ever told me that they thought this movie was good. This is who I'm yelling at. Every single person, which is most cast members I worked with at Walt Disney World.
So what I was gonna say.
Okay.
So, what I find disappointing about it is the fact that I think Tom Thumb is like a really interesting historical figure, and especially the fact that Barnum did adopt him as a child, and he was the centerpiece to his show, and then later they kind of became business partners, and he sort of parlayed himself into great wealth and sort of esteem. I would love to see a movie about Tom, right? Like, that's a way more interesting character.
Yes.
And so what's weird about it is having this as far as I could tell, the only major cast member who actually has a disability, because I know that the woman who plays the bearded lady, it does not have a beard in real life.
And you can see the wig line. You can literally see like how it's cut off and the plastic.
Right.
The lace.
So, like, here was this opportunity to make this, like, way more interesting movie about Tom and how his life was changed and the complicated decision of being a person with a disability in the 1800s and choosing to put yourself on display in a freak show. So that would have been a way more interesting story. Also, some other stories would have been more interesting. The bearded woman, I'm sure she has a name in the movie. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. Zendaya and her whole plot line. Would have loved to know literally anything about her that wasn't, I do trapeze and I'm black. Even Zac Efron's character, while also a white man, would have probably been more interesting. The choice that they made in this movie was the most interesting story we could tell about a person in the 1800s would be a guy who wasn't particularly wealthy when he was a kid, gets wealth pretty early in the movie, and then feels bad about the fact that he used to not have as much money as he does now. Then he goes off to hang out with an opera singer who's into him, but he's not into her. And that causes a crisis in his marriage that it has no reason to be a crisis because of the fact that he's not into her, and there's no actual impropriety happening in any way. And then he comes back to his wife, and they're like, we do continue to love each other. And they were like, of this movie with an incredibly diverse, like about an incredibly diverse group of people who came together in this interesting way in a weird time in American history, that's the most interesting story we think we could focus on. Is about Barnum having a very tepid crisis in his life. And I just feel that is like such a weird choice.
Yeah, and the idea of like the whole class thing was like, I felt like he just kept, like risking it all and gambling it all because he really wanted to like prove that he wasn't just like a tailor's son or that he is above beyond its means. But it's like, that is, other stories have told that a lot better than this. Like
he keeps gambling and winning also.
Yeah.
So there's like very little real tension to the, I mean, there's tension, you don't know if it's going to work out, but like he continues to succeed throughout it. And it's a story about somebody who's lower middle class becoming upper middle class. Like that's the great tension of this film.
And that how like he and his family don't fit in like, wealthy New York, whatever, because he got his money through like scammy ways.
He's a con man.
Yeah.
Well, no, he wasn't, because he was like actually working as like a ship company clerk. Like that was just like a real job. Not. You understand what I'm saying? He was like had an office job basically, is how this movie portrays it, and then he like went off to do art,
achieved his dreams,
and then also like I really don't like that this movie does the like very annoying thing that like a lot of movies do. This is not the only one where it'll be like, oh, the critic portrayed by one person represents
any criticism at all of like just like, don't understand
how critics should like the idea that he's like, there's a little line he has where he's like, for a critic who likes art, you should, or likes theater, you really don't enjoy theater. And I was like,
it does display a lot about the people who wrote the movie, that they feel that the things that Americans care most about are snobby critics and whether old money will take them in to their society. Because I have to tell you, those are truly not things that I think about ever. And so the fact that they were like, that should be the great tension in this movie, not how do you get a society to accept you when you're visibly very different from the people around you. That no one will connect with. But if we talk about theater critics, I think everyone will really resonate.
It's the like they always try to make these stories about like you have what it takes to, you know, like stick it to the man and like make it like like you know, get past your quote unquote bullies or whatever and like be successful and beat them at their own game. I'm like, this is always like just perpetuating so many problems about people, making people always selfish about like their wealth or whatever, and like will always just, I don't know, like I'm so tired of that being glorified
and even for the marginalized characters, it's like the lesson they have to learn is like believe in yourself more. Like, why don't you have more confidence about the fact that everyone's suppressing you?
Yeah.
I know I said I liked this movie. I don't like what the message is. I just liked the aesthetics of it, which we're going to talk about later. So
yes, yeah.
I do also, while we are talking about Phineas's story and how gobsmacked I am that this was what they felt.
The word of the pod is gobsmacked.
Gobsmacked. And
the musical.
The musical.
So Barnum brings Jenny Lind, this famous Swedish singer, to America. This is based on true events. And he starts to promote her, and he kind of loses focus a little bit in his circus because he wants to promote Jenny. And then after they've had a series of scenes together, where I guess she's like friendly with him, but I wasn't watching it being like, it's so clear this woman is like very into him and he's not.
The sexual tension is not palpable in this movie.
They seem like more than just business partners, but it wasn't like too much, I thought. And then there's this scene where, I don't remember, does she try to kiss him? Or there's something that happens where it's like clear that she
like comes on to him, basically.
She comes on to,
and
in her nightgown.
He doesn't reciprocate. And she's like, so I guess I'm just another one of your little acts. And I was like, so this man hired you to sing as a performer, and you're like, I can't believe you see me as a professional rather than a sexual object. I've never in my life been so offended that a promoter of my singing career would care about me merely for my ability to sing. What, Jenny?
Yeah.
What is your worldview in which you are offended that a man who hired you to do an act views you as an act?
It's also frustrating because that entire plot line is like made up. Like none of this like affair situation like happened. Like that is all just like Hollywood tropes, which are fine. I love a Hollywood trope. My middle name is Hollywood Trope. Adam Hollywood Trope. But it's so on the nose, and it doesn't, like, my overarching, I think, issue is just, like, it doesn't go anywhere. Like, it's not given time to, like, breathe and, like, you can take a trope and make it interesting by, like, going with it and being like, okay, objectively, where could this go? But, like, it just ends right after that. And then he has to, like, go back home, and his wife's like, Michelle Williams, who's also in a different movie. She's in a completely different film from everyone else in this movie. And God bless Michelle Williams. It is crazy to see her smiling in anything because she typically plays very sad characters. So it is wild to see her smile. But I was like, what movie are you in, girl?
Is it even a trope, though, to, like, have a woman be offended that a man is not, in a professional setting, is not interested in her romantically? It doesn't even feel like a trope to me. It's just, like, bizarre.
I think it's just the trope of, like, man falling in love with, like, the project.
The Eliza Doolittle.
What is that? What is that? So who am I thinking of? What is that character?
Subversion. Is it Pygmalion?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Pygmalion.
So it's like a subversion of Pygmalion is what you're saying. But she's like, I can't believe that you're not in love with your creation.
It's the she, because of how he acts towards her, like, obviously the scene where she first sings and he is like, that is the greatest voice I've ever heard, which I have a hilarious story about the first time Adam and I ever watched that scene. But it's that I think like she kind of like, subverts it and thinks that like, oh, this man is in love with me. And it definitely felt like they were they kept showing it that like he is so happy that he finally found something that isn't a scam or isn't something that I have to twist and subvert to people to buy. Like he doesn't have to do the, he doesn't have to put the pillow in the fattest man in the world. And like, that was my problem, because it was like, at the end of the day, I'm still supposed to root for this guy when this whole plot is just so terribly mean to his cast of like performers in the.
Wait, which part of the plot is mean to his performers?
Just the whole idea of like him being like, this is real talent. The circus performers have just been been like something to get me through or whatever, or like blah blah blah.
I just need to make a get rich quick scheme.
Yeah, right. This is what I'm talking about.
And so that is based on. I read an article about Barnum and Lind in a what is it? The 19th century theater class that I took, but I couldn't find it for this. But that part is true, that he brought her and like tried to use her to break into more legitimate sort of performance circles, and that she left early because she was offended by the way that he was promoting her.
Yes.
So
she like ended the contract early. She was like, I don't, it's not for me. And then she spent like all of her money on like charities in Sweden. Like, it's amazing.
So like, again, with the historical, now I guess you can't make a fun musical about Barnum and make it historically accurate, because we're about to tell you some stuff about P.T. Barnum. But like, again, with the historical story being way more interesting than this like completely just like not interesting romantic plotline. Like, there's no tension, there's no sexual chemistry, there's no like real threat that he's gonna leave his wife. It's like, what if he liked another lady? He doesn't, though, don't worry. That's the plot.
Or like, what if another pretty lady is in movie?
Like, what is genuinely, I want you to tell me specifically for the P.T. Barnum plotline, because the Carlisle plotline has its own thing. What is the conflict of this plot? Genuinely. I cannot. When I was writing that summary, I was like, I don't know what he is supposed to overcome. Because he doesn't learn anything. Yeah. I mean, I guess like ostensibly he learns.
Right.
Illusion is good.
Is meant to be that he gets distracted from the thing that he is good at, and then he tries to pursue something else. But what's confusing is that how it goes down with him and Jenny doesn't teach him that lesson. You know what I mean?
Lesson. Yeah.
Like, that should be about it. It should have been just what happened in real life, which is her getting upset about the way that he promotes her.
Yeah.
Because that teaches him more of a lesson. Because then that gives him the opportunity to say, like, you know what? Actually, this is me. Oh God. This is what I love. Like, I love being a huckster and like a carnival barker, and like I don't care, Jenny, that like this isn't your European fancy way of doing things. This is what I want to do. But like the way he learns it is just by a lady being like, I'm mad you see me as a professional. Like, I don't. How does that teach him?
It ended up being more of like because she rejected him, he was able to like go back home early, and like the fire in the carnival or the fire in the museum happened. Like, it ended up just being more happenstance that like, oh, I learned a lesson, quote unquote, rather than actually being like, I am gonna change, I'm gonna go back and like, you know.
Events just happened to him. I guess you could say he's like appreciating what he has or something, but like the whole movie has been him taking all these risks and building up this thing. So it's not like previously. I guess previously he was a character who was never satisfied with what he had. He was always going for more and like gambling for the next thing. So he's like appreciating his family and his thing that he already built. But like, I don't know.
It could be interesting
if
they
were like. He's a white
like,
man, so he doesn't have flaws.
If it was like, if they were more specifically,
or things will work out for him.
It could be more interesting if they were like specifically making it like a commentary on the American entrepreneurial spirit or something like that. Like, I don't know, just
which
like
is like Barnum is a fascinating study and like what is the identity of America? Like, and again, but like to make a really interesting movie about P.T. Barnum, it can't also be a fun musical because like it's just not It's not light. It's not fun. It's asking us to ask really hard questions about what it means to be American and what it means to like participate in a diverse society. So,
well, should we talk about the slavery plotline that was cut from his life?
I was so hoping that you guys wouldn't read ahead in my notes, but
I didn't read ahead. It's on the IMDb trivia page.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I would like to tell you about an article called by James R. Wright Jr. called How the Public Autopsy of Slave Joyce Heath Launched P.T. Barnum's Career as the Greatest Showman on Earth.
Yep.
Oh, no.
This is really bad. This is like, we've talked about bad people before on this podcast. This is bad. This is bad.
Oh, yikes.
So let's hear about how P.T. Barnum became who he is today.
As we all take a drink. All right, let's sink in.
Who he became, who he is today. A dead person.
A dead man. Okay. So P.T. Barnum was, as this movie tells us, he was the son of a tailor and also his father was also like an innkeeper and a store owner. So it sounds like he had various jobs that he did. But also his maternal grandfather was a state legislator and a landowner and a lottery schemer. So it sounds like he came from quite a bit of privilege on his mother's side. I mean, we all know, like, if you were a landowner, early America, that gave you a lot more rights than everybody else. Yep. But also did this kind of lottery scheme. So like, privilege, but also like a little bit shady, which is kind of makes sense. So then he ended up running a weekly newspaper for a while, but then he had libel suits against him. So he had to flee to New York. And for a while in Connecticut, he also ran a statewide lottery, which then he had to move to New York because lotteries became illegal in Connecticut. So he had this sort of, like legally gray stuff that he was doing ahead of time. And then he decides he wants to get into show business. And he sees this show featuring this elderly Black woman who claims to be George Washington's nurse, which would make her like 150 years old if this were true at the time. Her name is Joyce Heath, and we have very little information about her early life, like her real early life at least. She was born into slavery, and her legal status becomes very unclear by the time that Barnum encounters her because it is illegal at this time in the North to own slaves. So Barnum rented her. He leased her from the guy that was displaying her previously. So obviously that makes it fine. It's fine to lease people. You just can't own them. So he purchased the rights to her for $1,000 in 1835. And he like drums up the press. He brings in super big crowds. He displays her as a 161-year-old former nursemaid to George Washington. And this article talks about the fact that what Barnum's real skill was in drumming up press. So at the time, there was this sort of new technological invention where it was much cheaper to print newspapers. So we had these penny newspapers that were very about like sensationalism, and they weren't interested in factual information. They just like would print whatever as long as people would read it, basically. So he ginned up a lot of press. He also had this really great skill of like, as soon as interest started to dip, he'd come up with a new story to get interest. So at one point he claimed that she was an automaton made of, quote, India rubber, whalebone, and a number of springs, end quote. So every time that people lost interest in George Washington's nursemaid, he was like, what other crazy thing could I say?
She's a transformer! Optimus Prime! Oh my god!
Yeah. And I think it's important to note this, that it says itinerant freak shows like his weren't an especially novel phenomenon in the 1830s, but the media frenzy that Barnum managed to whip up was something different. Because they like very heavily imply in Greatest Showman that he like invented the concept of a circus. And also the way they tell the story is that he starts with the museum and then it burns down and then he puts it in a tent. So like, that's not true. There were itinerant circuses. It also happened in the opposite direction in his life. He like started out touring circuses and eventually bought a museum. So that's wild. He doesn't get credit for inventing circuses. So as he's displaying Joyce in a truly unbelievable display of audacity, in one case he was facing protests from clergymen about the fact that he was displaying this enslaved woman. And so he remarketed the show
as the first time I've agreed with the church?
He remarketed the show as an anti-slavery benefit and claimed that the proceeds would be put toward buying Heath's still enslaved great-grandchildren. So he had truly no shame. And this was
And where did that money end up going? Do we know?
There was no comment, but I didn't feel that it needed to be commented on. And then this was really interesting. So this was like a very well-researched article. So I think that the author probably had reason for this claim, but they didn't cite anything in particular. So I'm not quite sure where it came from. But they said that while their relationship was very obviously unbalanced, it does seem like Heath taught a lot to Barnum because this was sort of his first foray into the world of showmanship, and she had a lot of experience of like being an act. So she kind of like, was a little bit of a mentor to him, I guess, into the world of putting on a show. So he released her in 1835, and then she died in 1836. But since it was
this is when it gets fucked.
Yeah.
This
since
is when
it was
gets
a lease,
fucked.
Since it was a
This
lease,
was when?
obviously 1836. So it was a year after he leased her. But since it was a lease, I'm sure that he just like let her body go respectfully and interred her, right? No. So he hosted a public autopsy of her body to see how old she was.
Oh my God.
So there were 1,500 spectators who each paid 50 cents apiece, which was a considerable sum at the time.
Oh my God.
And the author points out that this was not unusual in 19th century America, that the bodies of deceased black slaves were routinely sold by their masters to medical schools for anatomical dissection, and others were resurrected from black cemeteries. And what was interesting is that public dissections were not uncommon for criminals. And the idea of that was both to like promote scientific knowledge in the public, and the idea that medical students did need cadavers in order to like learn about the body and become doctors, but also that part of dissection for criminals was like part of your punishment was being on display in this way. But autopsies were different, and so an autopsy is where you like have a medical question you're trying to solve, like how did this person die, or like I'm trying to learn about this disease that they had or something like that. So they were rarer, but they also didn't have quite the same level of stigma against them. So this was a public autopsy.
Yeah,
was
so
part
RJ,
of like
RJ, what do you think the question that will be posed?
I don't like where this is going. Oh no.
So part of the way that he kind of got away with it was the fact that he was like, well, it's an autopsy, so it's like, and that was like a less stigmatized idea. So the thing that they were trying to determine was how old was she? And that was the justification, was because it was like, well, she said she was George Washington's nursemaid, so like, let's find out how old she really was. Turned out she was in her 80s. And so Barnum somehow managed to spin this to his advantage by continuing to plant even crazier stories about her in the press, like, oh, maybe this wasn't really Joyce Heath, and like she's still alive somewhere else, and they dissected a different person, or like it was the doctor who was lying to people or whatever. And he wrote several autobiographies in his lifetime, and every time he told a different story about Heath. So we'll never know like if he was genuinely deceived about her age or if he was totally in on it. I mean, I'm going to guess that he was aware of the fact that she wasn't 106 years old. The entire time. Yeah. So that was how he, kind of broke out into the scene, his big break, really exciting. And then after that, he worked for a while at Aaron Turner's traveling circus. And after about 6 months, started his own circus, which he eventually purchased a riverboat that went up and down the Mississippi doing performances. And then eventually he returned to New York City and opened the American Museum. So it was sort of, he had this whole life of doing itinerant circuses, and then eventually worked his way up to having the museum. Did not invent circuses, but did profit off of the bodies of black women, as all entrepreneurs do. Thank you so much for coming to my TED Talk, and thank you specifically to James R. Wright Jr. for writing this article, and giving our listeners the information that they need.
Here's I noticed some flags from that story with the whole him starting as a new.
I don't know if you...
Where? I didn't see them.
I thought it was a really lovely, pleasant.
I was charmed the entire way through.
Nostalgic story, truly.
Oh, for a time back when. Americana, Miss Americana. No, I mean, okay. First of all, the fact that he did have a stint in like newspapers or whatever. Very much that one scene when he was a kid, like shouting out the different headlines and stuff of just him trying to do different things to survive.
Yeah, they showed him as a newsie at one point. Yeah.
Yes, like that was the callback, the call to that. It is crazy that, oh my God, this whole autopsy thing ended up just being like how many jelly beans are in the jar? Like it's just, and just other alternatives to that to kind of keep the scam going, which that was my thing. Like, it just felt so, even though I didn't have the full aspect of like what that was watching the movie like now twice, you just knew that like something is off with the real story of this man, that I'm like, should I be celebrating this person? Like, I don't know. Ugh.
No. The answer is no.
No, the answer is no.
I would argue you shouldn't celebrate. You should celebrate neither the version of Phineas that is a fictional character presented in this movie, nor should you be celebrating P.T. Barnum, the real human being.
Yeah.
I mean, Phineas in the movie is a lot less problematic, but he's still not really a person to be celebrated.
Yeah. But that was the thing. Just the entire thought I had in our second watch through was like, why did they feel the need to tell the story? Just because Hugh Jackman is a showman? Hey, pick another one. Or make a completely new story.
I mean,
they kind of did, so.
I do love Hugh Jackman's presence in the culture as like a classic song and dance man. I like the idea that we have a person like that exists. Yeah. But yeah, put him in anything else, please. Or playing any other character. Can we talk now? I want to talk more about disability. Is this a good time? Mm-hmm. So since we talked about the newsy scene, I think just before that, or maybe as part of that, there's some.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
It's after he's orphaned.
Yeah, after he's orphaned, then he's like working for himself and whatever, because he's on the street. And at one point he steals an apple, and then he gets chased, and I think the apple gets away from him or something like that. And then a woman who has some sort of a facial disfigurement hands him an apple because she sees that he's hungry, because you obviously need to have a scene that explains why someone would be sympathetic towards people who have disabilities. Because there needs to be a why. You couldn't simply have human empathy for other people. You need to like have a scene that explains why a person would care that there are people who have disabilities in the world.
I also, I don't know this is true or not, so this is purely conjecture. I think that her face was CGI'd. We don't know. We may never know. It just, when I was watching it on my massive TV and I was sitting like 3 feet away from it, I was like, something looks like it's like uncanny valleyed, like some doctoring was done. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll never know.
I will certainly say that it seems like the track record in this movie is not to actually cast people with disabilities to play characters with disabilities. That certainly seems true.
I mean, even the other performers were like, that woman is supposed to be albino, but it's like not, like, I don't know, like not accurately portraying albino. Like some people were just Asian. That was their, like some people just had a crazy wig. Like that was
I mean, that's like a mixed bag though, because as I just told the story about Joyce Heath, like certainly the idea that like just people of color being put in the same category as people with disabilities as like quote unquote freaks is historically accurate. So like while it seems wild, it's like not wrong that was how it was. I feel like I think potentially the most offensive thing to me about the portrayal of disability in this movie is the fact that we have this whole scene where Barnum is casting and we like see people with various different sort of bodily abnormalities. So there's like a guy who's really tall, there's a guy who's quite overweight, there's a guy who's just like got tattoos all over himself. And so we see this like celebration of like body diversity and him like being excited about the fact that that he's got these like interesting looking people that he can cast in his show. And then we cut to a dance number in which everyone has the most normative bodies I've ever seen. They were like, nobody who has a disability is a dancer. We couldn't possibly just cast professional dancers who have disabilities. They have to be, completely able-bodied, like hyper able-bodied. Like you can tell they have like strong dancer bodies, totally normative for every dance number, because we couldn't possibly show you what it looks like for a person with a disability to be performing in a show, which is the plot of our movie.
Now you're yelling at me.
No, I'm yelling at you. I'm so sorry.
Why did you cast that way, Adam?
Adam, how dare you cast the movie in this way?
Canceled again.
Canceled again.
Yeah, I think the thing that about what I will call the C plot of this movie is frustrating is that the C plot is being the people,
the C plot. Yeah.
Like the people in the circus are the most interesting characters in this movie, and you could do the most stuff with them, and still, if you focused on them, you could both, if you want to have your cake and eat it too, you could both have Barnum be the entrepreneur that you want to make him out to be, and also flip that and show but he wasn't all that great. Like, you could do both if you center this movie on these performers and not him. Because then you don't have to make him the hero that you have to root for the whole movie.
Right.
And I think Keala Settle, who plays the bearded woman, who's famously on Broadway, she played Madame Thénardier in Les Mis when it was on Broadway. She does a great job. She has a really funny video with Seth Rudetsky on Playbill.com where she does a bunch of bits and it's very funny. Maybe I'll throw it in. Who knows? But she is really good in this bearded lady role, but it's just she's not really given anything to do. The scene where he finds her in that laundry in that laundry shop, and she's hidden away because of how she looks. There's such actual fear and just unsure of everything that's going to happen, because obviously she's been in the world in this way, and people clearly look down on her for how she looks and blah blah blah, and I thought that was really interesting. And then it just doesn't go anywhere, and you don't get anything except for at one party they shut the door on them and didn't let them go to the party, and so then they had to sing the rousing anthem from Dear Evan Hansen,
You will be found.
You will be found. So that also had to happen in this movie. And I was
having only ever heard that song, the fact that it came midway through the movie was such a shock to me that I assumed that the whole movie would be about
leads up to that.
I knew that it was her that sang it, and she played a bearded lady, and I was like, oh, so the whole movie is gonna be about how people have these really complicated feelings about being on display in a freak show. It's a really complex thing to decide to do, and then it's going to be the celebratory moment when they fully embrace that's what they want to do with their lives. And it was just in the middle there of them being oh, we got to talk about the freaks for a second, and then and then we'll go, and then we will, just like Barnum, forget about them in order to
about them.
Yes.
And they do not show up again for 40. I'm literally not kidding. They don't show up again.
Until they burn and have to run away.
No, worse. They show up in the second drinking song, which fuck the fact that there are 2 drinking songs in this musical. Fuck off. The second drinking song, in which he doesn't even say I should have known better. You guys were right. You are the stars. Da da da. Just nothing. And they're it's okay. And it's he didn't even ask for forgiveness. What are we?
They start out really mildly busting his chops and being you got to get it together. But he does not apologize to them in the way that is needed.
Yeah, and they just had these throwaway lines from the bearded lady of great, another show that he's not going to show up in, or oh yeah, he's in and out right away. And that was my main problem about the song, is that they did it was a pretty good lead up into that song of I feel so proud of you. Let's go to Buckingham Palace. Let's show the world that we matter, that like we are talented and we can do this, and then like to bring them back, and like after Jenny Lynn's performance they're not even allowed to like celebrate. Like that was a good lead up, but then it's turned into like it's supposed to be like this shift in the plot, but it doesn't actually change the trajectory of the movie. Like it is just a song.
Their arc has to be so up and down because they keep having to like, they need to make sure that the characters
they need to keep
are like
challenging it, trying
low confidence, high confidence when it suits the needs of where Barnum needs to be, instead of like telling the story of how they gain comfort with being in a freak show. Because freak shows have this really complicated history of like, truly, like obviously putting yourself on display to be gawked at in this way is really uncomfortable. But it
it's
really
like their
was
only like form of money and
your
like
option
success
for independence, and also like you can reclaim that gaze, right? You can like do it on your own terms, and it's such a more interesting story. And I want to plug the movie Code of the Freaks if everyone is interested in portrayals of disability on film, because this is a documentary made analyzing like 100 depictions of characters with disabilities on screen, done by like really amazing disability studies scholars. And they talk about, there's a movie called Freaks from the 30s that they talk about as this really good example of like, there's this like gawker gaze, but there's also this sense of like we formed a community with people who are also outsiders like us. And so watch Code of Freaks instead of Greatest Showman, everybody.
And I mean, I will just say, like, to go back, I did look up the actress who plays the woman who gives the apple. Just an actress. No, nothing. Nope, CGI. It was full CGI put upon.
How much did they spend on this movie again?
$84 million.
So for $84 million, you couldn't find any actors who had disabilities. It was out of your budget to do the search it would require for you to find a few actors who had disabilities to be in a movie about P.T. Barnum. That didn't feel important to you.
This person would have only had to shoot for an hour. Show up on set, put a like shawl on, and like go hand an apple to somebody and walk off set. That is all that is required of them, and no, can't even do that.
I guarantee you that I just know more people with disabilities just in my life, just every day, than they put in this movie.
But it's that whole it's the Hollywood like bubble. Sorry to our friends who live in the Hollywood bubbles, but it's like that idea of like, no, there's absolutely no one we could do. Like it's not worth the search. We're never gonna find anyone. I'm like, yeah, that's the point. You're not, just look outside Hollywood. Like,
I put out a call to 3 different agents, and none of them have already hired a person who has a visible disability. So I don't know what you want me to do about it.
I would like to play a little bit of the song "This Is Me," which was nominated for an Academy Award, did not win. But I think it's probably the best song in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Here's a little bit of "This Is Me."
The last thing I will say about like it was that moment when the woman with the apple appears. I completely forgot about that scene, first of all, from the first time I watched it. But I literally looked at Adam and I was like, it's the magical freak. Like it's
Yeah.
And like it was just and then I was mad.
Do you know what's a more interesting scene is at the bank when he goes to first get the loan to open the museum, he sees Tom and he looks at him. And then he goes in to talk to the guy at the bank and he says, we all want to suppress this urge, but we're fascinated by difference and we want to look at it. Mm-hmm. And that's Barnum's real story. And what should have happened is instead of seeing Tom at the bank, because then it's like, well, how would he have come up with the whole idea? Have him as an adult see a person who has a visible disability and be gawking at them and have this realization, because his real motivation in real life and what makes more sense in the movie is that he is fascinated by difference, not that he is empathetic towards it, because that's not at all what he ends up doing. So make that the scene and make us be uncomfortable about the fact that like that's his real reasoning behind opening
if you want
the
to
circus.
Make the story and make your narrative of like a hero, then start with that. That's already a place you can build from.
Yeah, and have him learn his lesson, right? Throughout the course of the movie is like have him become a better person, but like no, he couldn't have a flaw, a real flaw in the movie.
Yeah. Like we couldn't show that this person was like a human at the time. They really wanted to be like, no, he was ahead of his time. He already knew how progressive, like blah blah blah. And like that. No.
At the end of the movie.
Oh, the quote.
The critic comes. And so there's this critic who's been saying throughout it, like, he's like all this pomp and circumstance. And they like imply that the critic uses the word circus to describe it. And like Barnum invents the application of the word circus to the thing that we now call it, which is also not true. And the critic has been like on him the whole time. And then his museum burns down and we're all very sad. And then the critic comes and is like, but actually there's some real, benefit to what you did to put people, I don't remember exactly. I only wrote down the last part of the quote, but it was like to put people who are different on stage and present them as equals. And sir, you can absolutely eat a dick if you think that either this movie or P.T. Barnum has ever presented these people as equals. That is not at all the thing that he is doing. No. And there are amazing disability studies scholars, and I won't go over all of it, who write about the way that we perceive people with visible disabilities and ways that we view them. And this is absolutely an exotic and a wondrous way of putting people on stage. It is not an equal way of putting people on stage. So to claim that Barnum was progressive due to the fact that he let people with disabilities be in his show because he knew he could profit off of them is so whack.
There are literally no words for how poorly I think this script is written. I'm so sorry. I think the screenwriter should be taken out and shot. Like, I think it's so bad.
I want to say, so one more complaint about the way that this whole thing is portrayed is that they also have these protesters. The way that the museum burns down is because these protesters have come to like protest the show, and then they like get into a scrape and they start a fire and they burn down the museum. What are the protesters protesting?
Thank you. The signs were so generic of like, you are freaks. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the marketing material. Like, but they're not. It sounded like it was trying to like parallel, like almost religiously. Like there was something like, you're inhuman. You shouldn't be here. But it's like, it was just not clear, and it just ended up. But the people that they cast and the way they made it look was that they were just like drunk like working class dudes. It's not like they were, like religious people or even like people that were like upper class. Because like I would see that more.
Why would religious people be protesting this either?
Yeah.
Right? Like what? I feel very strongly that if you're going to have a message movie and if you're going to portray oppression, you have to portray a compelling version of bigotry. Because if what you want to tell me bigotry is just like guys being mad and like, I'm going to throw something at you because you look different, then everyone watching the movie will go, oh, well, I would never do that. I couldn't be ableist because like, I wouldn't do that. That guy's a real jerk. You have to present people with a version of this that they find some small part of them agrees with in order for you to be making any sort of a point about how ableism is perpetuated to the current day. Because I'm not going to show up at a show where people are honestly presenting themselves and throw things at them. But that doesn't mean I'm not ableist, right? So like you have to show what their thinking was. And there were plenty of examples of that. We used to have things called ugly laws that just barred people from being in public if they were too unpleasant to look at. This is a real thing that happened. But like, you have to, I mean, I don't know how do you make that sympathetic. It's so wild that ever existed. But like, you have to present people with the discomfort. A lot of ableism is about our discomfort at seeing the idea that we too one day could become less able than we are, and that we will one day die is usually like the really deep layer underneath it, right? Is like our bodies are fragile. Yeah. And like, it's understandable to feel discomfort about your own fragility, and I understand that it sparks that discomfort in you, but like, you gotta take people through that as the root cause of ableism, because guys throwing Molotov cocktails doesn't tell me anything about the roots of it.
I think
about Zendaya. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to move on to. RJ, do you have anything to say?
Just the last thing of like the whole hypocrisy of like trying to build this main character hero narrative for me hit its peak when he ran inside the burning museum to save.
Oh my God.
Zac Efron. I was like, this is truly like
to save the white guy.
Yeah, just
that he had abandoned all these people. They were mad. They were mad because Big Daddy Barnum wasn't around and paying enough attention to them. That was their complaint, was like, Daddy left. And then he leaves for like a long time, and then he comes back and immediately becomes the hero again because he runs into this building to save Zac Efron.
To
save Zac, like, even just the choice of being like, Tom Thumb is trapped. Like, how much more interesting is that?
Have him prove his loyalty to his employees and the people who he's put on display in this way, and that he does care about them, not Jenny. It makes so much more dramaturgical sense.
He proves his loyalty to his financier.
Yeah, he proves his loyalty. Like, and the movie being like, look, he ran in and saved the white savior of the marginalized crew. Like, but that's already layered enough.
But we do have to keep in mind that this is actually the best movie in the best movie. This is what's the best movie?
That he is the greatest showman.
He is truly the greatest showman.
But on top of that, this is actually the best scene in the movie, because at the closing of this sequence, the building is burning down, and we see the elephants who have stopped fleeing the building to stand there and watch the building burn down, because these elephants understand the abstract concept of having been performers, and that having given them independence and financial support, and they care about the fact that this building is burning down because of it what it represents to them as elephants.
Yeah, you know how wild animals love to like be near fire. That's like a big thing.
Animals are like, this thing's burning down. I will get a safe distance, but I will stay
front row
seats. Watch it, because you know how elephants are like, they're like kind of pyromaniacs. They're like really into watching it.
But then truly being like, they're all the same. From the bearded lady to the elephant, they all feel the same. What are you trying to say?
Black people, elephants, ultimately they're all the same. That's what this movie is trying to say.
Well, let's talk about Zendaya.
Remember when I started this by saying I liked the movie?
Yes.
Let's talk about how I think the only part of this movie that I actually enjoy, and this is wild, is I do like the love story between Zendaya and Zac Efron, because I think they're both very charming.
They are.
And
great chemistry. Hot.
I think I think if This Is Me is not the best song in this movie, then it's Rewrite the Stars, which is like her trapeze number. They're like duet together. And I again wish maybe that this movie was just about them. Like, I just like...
Yeah.
Because...
Or an album. I wish this movie was an album. Yeah. Or a concert.
Or I could just listen to it and never have to watch it. You know what I mean? Like, things like that.
I definitely think that their number is the best shot number. I think it's the most interesting visually number, where they are like kind of doing trapeze and kind of coming in. She's kind of coming in and out of his vision, and it's like symbolic of him trying to like capture her as his love. I liked that a lot.
I will have to call out though that Zac Efron is absolutely doing mask drag. He is doing Butch Queen. Like when he first started talking, he was like, "Oh, I'm a producer of the theater." I'm like, "Whoa, what is going on?"
The very first scene he's in, he's like, "Hey, how are you, bro?" It's like, I don't know
What
about
is
that.
this Butch Queen category, girl?
I have to say, Zac Efron, while he is like objectively handsome, he doesn't like particularly do it for me, but Zendaya absolutely does particularly do it for me. And so her being in this movie was amazing. And I do agree that like those two have chemistry. Well, I wish it were Jeremy Jordan, or even more, I wish it were Tom Holland, her real boyfriend, who I'm obsessed with them as a couple. That is like, I think the fact that they, even though I know literally nothing about her character except that she is Black and a trapeze artist, I like cared about them as a couple because I think those two had a lot of chemistry, so I just like wanted them to succeed because of that, basically.
And they just like capture every time she is on screen, you just are drawn to her and want to see how she's
so
reacting,
good.
what she wants to do.
Yeah.
She's really good. I really hated that green and pink dress they put her in for
Truly the ugliest dress I've ever seen.
the ugliest dress I have ever laid eyes on.
That's why they didn't let her in the show, was because of the ugly law, and they were like, not in that dress.
His parents were not commenting on her race, guys.
Yeah.
They were just like,
they were like,
fashion.
you didn't let us finish.
Yeah.
It was the dress, honey.
You didn't realize, but Joan Rivers played his mother. She was just the fashion police. That's what you
ow,
do.
ow, 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 my eyes.
I saw the dress and I was like, is this like an intentional choice of like she doesn't have the opportunity to go out very much, so she like doesn't have access to a good dress or whatever, but there was not enough acknowledgement of it for it to have been a choice.
It felt very much like intro to film studies, intro to cinematography, like we'll represent that she doesn't belong by making her stand out in her costume.
It felt to me like the high school theater department doesn't have all that many options for 19th century costumes, and this was one that was in the back and happened to fit Zendaya.
It's like we're doing Thoroughly Modern Merely one year, but then we could also be doing Miss Alliance. Who knows? We'll just make it work.
I do like their song together. Let's play a little bit of it.
No one can rewrite the stars. How can you say you're mine? Everything keeps us apart, and I'm not the one you were meant to find. It's not up to you, it's not up to me. When everyone tells us what we can be, how can we rewrite the stars? Say that the world can be ours tonight. All I want is to fly with you. All I want is to fly.
Let us never forget that Zendaya was once a pop star, and this song
And a model.
gave me that pop star energy. It's the like, I know you want me, like that classic pop
Maybe
sting.
that's it. Maybe it's that I don't think Hugh Jackman sounds good singing pop
music.
Like his voice is too musical theater for this. Like, because I do think Kiala Settle really nails This Is Me, but it's more
But her
anthemic.
songs are the anthem songs.
Right.
Like her songs are the Broadway songs.
And Zendaya sounds so good on
So
Rewrite
good
the
in it.
Stars.
Yeah.
They both do, actually. But he also has like a very pop sound, Zach.
Zendaya also feels like she's excited that she gets to be in a musical in a way that I don't feel like anyone else is quite giving me. Not that anyone else is like reluctant to be in a musical.
Yeah.
They were not Dear Evan Hansen characters, but like I feel like Zendaya, like, would like, especially like in her dance sequences, she just like looked like she was having so much fun dancing.
Mhm.
And it felt like, because I think maybe this movie felt confused about whether it was like important or fun and what the right balance was, that she was like the only person who felt like she
was
felt like she was
important
allowed to
and
just be
fun.
having fun. Yeah. That was like fine to do both fully.
Because she was like, I know my character has a message and has a point, so I'm not even concerned about that. I am just gonna live the truth.
Yeah.
And it is shocking that I don't think, like, I want to see Zendaya do more movie musicals. Like, truly.
Yeah.
I think
needs to
she's
be
great.
more. Yeah.
I think she's good in this. I'm sorry. I don't think anyone's great in this.
You know what?
Even
I'm
the
gonna put
greatest
it in
showman
there.
is not great.
Would you agree that she was the best of the people in this though? Or do you think someone else was better?
I'm
gonna throw in Michelle Williams in there. I truly think Michelle.
think that
I am
performance
throwing
is,
her in, girl.
I think that performance is good in a different movie. She is not in the same acting world that the rest of the people in this movie are in, and I think that's
agree,
what's most
but I'm
frustrating
watching that movie.
Yeah.
I'm in that.
I would
movie.
love to see her that whatever movie she's in. I want to watch
the greatest
that
charity.
Showman. I think
I
it
don't
would
know.
probably be.
She is a pretty boring plot.
Yeah,
It is, but I don't know. Like there is that moment.
Mother, wife, the hardest job in the world, Molly Matini.
Yeah, I'd love to see more white women being left by their husbands and being lonely.
thing that
That's
I do
something
love
I've never
about-
seen.
What I do love about Michelle Williams, though, is that she does such a great job of the subtle things, which, like, back in Jenny Lynn's song, there is that moment where she is watching her and really like, wow, this is great. This is actually, like, beautiful. And then glances at his her husband, kind of like
That was a
having
journey.
watching Phineas and, like, questioning, like, okay, but is there something going on? Like, in one shot of her going, doot, she, like, tells the whole story.
Yes, I
Which
would agree
is, like,
that
honestly, should have just been that and we didn't have to actually
I would
go
agree
through
that
the whole story.
what you're saying is Michelle Williams is technically a proficient actress, which
Yeah.
I would agree with. If that is your main point here, then I will also agree with that. I would not say
alright,
she's
okay.
the best person in this movie. I would probably say it's either Zendaya. My top three are Zendaya, Keala Settle, and probably Zac Efron. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think he's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I think
they do a good job. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he gets to, like, have some, like, kind of looser moments than, like, Hugh does, which I think is, like, nice for him.
Yeah.
Well, going off of your comment of, like, Zendaya sounding great in the pop,
Mhm.
and, you know, the Broadway, more of the musical theater performance, singing better in the musical theater, I want to talk about the greatest soprano of all time, Jenny Lynn.
Are you going to tell the story?
Yeah.
Right.
Molly, when Adam and I watched this movie for the first time, we were watching the scene, preparing that she is about to perform. She steps on stage.
No. Hold on. You have not set this up. For the people who have not seen this movie, specifically my mother, because I know she's not going to watch it. Any time that this character is referenced, she is referenced as being the greatest opera singer of all time. That
All
is
time.
specific, not singer. I think if they said singer, I would be more okay with what happens. But they are like,
Opera
she is an
singer.
opera
Throughout
singer.
Europe. Everyone in Europe knows her name.
Now you can continue.
She steps on stage. The music starts playing. And Adam clutches my hand. And I'm like, what? And he looks at me and goes, she's not going to sing opera. As if just found out that someone is about to run after him and, like, stab him. Like, she's not going to sing opera. She's not going to sing opera.
Yeah.
And
I was someone who found out the Wall Street market just crashed in 1929 and I'm
It is
about to jump off a
2008.
building. I've lost all my money.
Literally as if all of his money just disappeared. He was like, she's about to sing a pop song.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she sings a pop song that, you know, an alto could probably belt out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the pop musical element of this movie. I'm a stan for Moulin Rouge. I love a pop musical. I love the Baz Luhrmann of it all. I felt like, though, with Jenny Lind, as you said, she was presented as an opera singer. She was an opera singer in real life. And never. And I was like, this would be a great time in the movie to, like, vary up the genre a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I see why they didn't go for, like, a straight aria, right? That would be pretty jarring in comparison to the other music. But it was, like, the time for a pop-infused opera piece.
Yes.
Rather than just a pop song. And I love pop music, but it doesn't show off people's vocal ranges. And the point of the character is her vocal talent. And
she is the most technically impressive singer that he has ever heard in his life.
Right. Yeah. So imagine then that Taylor Swift gets on stage after that spin.
And then all of a sudden she sings McCavity, McCavity.
Yeah.
Don't even say the name. Taylor Swift is going to copyright strike us.
No.
She's already going to copyright strike us because I sang part of her song at the top. Well, let's listen to a bit of Never Enough, my favorite song in this musical.
All the shine of 1,000 spotlights, all the stars we steal from the night sky will never be enough, never be enough. Towers of gold are still too little. These hands could hold the world, but it'll never be enough, never be enough. For me, never, 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 for me, never enough, never enough, for me, for me, for me.
And I had, when this movie was popular and was like playing, Adam and I would like playfully argue with a lot of people that we knew that loved this movie and said that specific thing. And their go-to was like, that's not the point. It's a blah, blah, blah.
It's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor.
It's supposed to be like it's representing like her emotion, how incredible she is emotionally. And
but
I was like
told through the pop whatever, like tech whatever. I'm like, yeah, girl, I know what a metaphor is.
It's not one.
It didn't work. It's not good.
How does that song tell me metaphorically?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. I think the other thing, if they had never said if they had not specifically labeled it as being like she's an opera star, I think I would have been more like fine, because they do vary up the sound of the music in that it's like an orchestral piece. Like there is an orchestra, there's a bunch of strings in the music. Like that part is fine. I just was like not ready for her to just like pop belt. I was like, we're doing that. I was very frustrated by that.
And I don't have a problem with dubbing too. Like I don't have a problem with if there is I mean it happened all the time in Hollywood. But like it was such a disconnect of like I can clearly tell that I am hearing a voice that is not coming from you. That like it's like I don't know, it was so obviously a lip sync that I was like, I don't even know. She didn't even look like she was like singing. You know what I mean? Like
she was
looked
singing
like she
live.
was acting singing. But was she singing like
she sang in the room and she was very nervous about it, and Hugh Jackman made her feel better. So
good on you, Jake.
Good on you.
Good on you, Jake.
Yeah, I wish that we did more dubbing. I wish that there were more. If they're gonna cast stars in movies that don't sing, just dub them. But I think you have to
so they cast star. Sorry, what's her name? Rebecca Ferguson, star we all know and love, star.
Okay, I was thinking of like Beauty and the Beast when I made that comment, but Rebecca Ferguson has a career. I just think that like you have to embrace the artificiality and the camp of it if you're gonna dub people, and there's like no room for that. It feels like with Jenny Lind, because we all have to like respect her in this like really boring way that like doesn't allow us to like have any fun with her songs.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, I liked this movie. I know that I keep saying really mean things about it, but I did actually like it.
And I to bring it back to the whole pop musical thing, I think is very clear that this director's main movie influence was definitely Baz Luhrmann, Moulin Rouge.
They're very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. But there were so many moments in the movie where I was like, this just feels like a watered down version of Moulin Rouge. That like, are you actively making a point? Because the thing with Baz's movies is that like the disjointedness of like his point of view in actual filmmaking kind of like helps the emotional journey that you have to go through with the characters. Like the fact that Moulin Rouge feels like a frenzy is because that's like, it's like mirroring how you should feel of
at the Moulin Rouge.
Yeah, exactly. And that I didn't get that same like effect that the pop musical like would have proven to like, you know, to give the audience like that extra thing to lean into the story more.
Yeah, I just think generally like this direction of this musical is just not I said it earlier, I don't Baz Luhrmann's style is not for me. That's just not what I'm into, and that's fine, and I recognize that, and I know that it is a lot of people really enjoy that, and so I don't begrudge them that.
Romeo and Juliet stand here, love it.
Right. But like what's cool, if you want to like break it down and distill it, is like what's cool about Baz Luhrmann and specifically Moulin Rouge is there's like this flair and this like artistic style to it that like that's what's like fun about watching it is like there's so much like added stuff just in like camera work and in editing that like makes it feel like a frivolous romp. Like that's kind of like the joy of watching that movie, even though it is like a melodrama. But like this movie is like going for that, but doesn't like, it goes like part way there, and then like because there's not that like extra bit of like oomph, it just like kind of falls flat in a lot of places for me.
So as I'm a really big Baz Luhrmann fan. I love Moulin Rouge. I love Romeo plus Juliet. I like Great Gatsby. I think I'm a little too attached to the source material to love his Great Gatsby. But anyway, overall I'm a fan of his. I think that this movie had the right flair. And I guess I appreciate it because I kind of wish Baz Luhrmann would like become a genre that people did because I like his stuff. I think the difference is that Baz Luhrmann's characters are flawed. And I think this movie is afraid to let its characters be flawed.
Yeah. The only people who are flawed are like the protesters. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, in like the most stereotypical way
generic,
they possibly could.
Even like the parents, like one doesn't let him date a black woman, the other won't let him their daughter date someone poor. Like
yeah. I mean, there's all just like all these kind of just like generic like Costco brand tropes just like running through this film.
Kirkland.
It's
Kirkland Baz Luhrmann.
I'm not expecting a movie musical to give me actual literal history. That is not what I go see movie. I don't expect any movie to do that. I want to make that very clear. I understand the difference between like
that's not a documentary,
artistic intent and a documentary. And even a documentary is subjective through the eyes of the documentarian. So fine. But I do think that like why don't if you were just gonna go this far, if you were gonna remove this much from his actual life, why don't you just make a story about a man who like builds a freak show and in like any like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
just don't make it
anybody.
Yeah,
you
just
already
make him a
changed
fictional character.
Bailey. Like there's not Barnum and Bailey. Like Bailey is like Carlisle's kind of an amalgamation of like Bailey and another person who like actually existed. So like you already felt fine getting rid of him as a person, so like why not just be like
inspired by
P.T. Barnum and other. There are many people who created freak shows and circuses and like all this kind of stuff in the 1800s. Like why not just like mash them all into a pot and be like, this is kind of like an interesting take that we wanted to do and talk about different themes and whatever. Like why not do that? Why no one is going to be like I'm part of I'm here for P.T. Barnum IP. So if I hear that Barnum IP is happening, I do need to see it.
I do go to all the drive-through experiences, the theme parks.
The fan base are called bar nuts. So
Yes.
we're real stands for Barnum. Like nobody's doing that. Like why?
Yeah. The truly offensive thing too is that they end the movie on a P.T. Barnum quote, which tells you more than anything else that
Exactly.
our intention is to memorialize P.T. Barnum, the real human being who got his career started by autopsying an enslaved woman. So I think that is, to me, and it is bizarre, the combination of we're afraid to have the characters have any flaws, but we also want it based on real events. Even if you picked a less problematic figure than P.T. Barnum, I'm trying to think really quickly of a person that I could name that wouldn't get me in trouble, but I'm afraid to. So, which tells you, but the reason being that all human beings are flawed, right? So I don't know, let's say George Washington is good and bad stuff about him, sure, right? Yeah. But I wouldn't be offended if somebody said I'm making a George Washington movie, right? I was skeptical of the concept of a P.T. Barnum movie, knowing nothing about it. And I think that trying to base it on true events, but also being too afraid to make your characters have flaws is a really bad combination.
Yeah.
It's the worst way you can go with it. And I think that maybe while I want more pop musicals like it, I think that maybe the style also didn't help with the fear of having character flaws.
And I also think too, I hadn't listened to Hamilton or anything at this time, but I think it coming out a year after the Hamilton explosion, I don't think I think Hamilton's just more sophisticated. And even Hamilton absolutely has issues in terms of portraying all of its characters in their true complexity.
Yeah.
It doesn't really
Thomas Jefferson, yeah.
Right. It doesn't talk about really get into the nitty-gritty on that. But there's enough nuance there that it gets more of a pass than this does, where they just don't address it. They just don't talk about it and pretend it doesn't exist.
It's so wild to me that Hamilton's even coming up in this conversation, because those two things have just nothing to do with each other in my mind. Just Hamilton is not something I would ever compare to The Greatest Showman.
It's just the basic premise of putting popular music now in a different setting, just that basic
and
fact.
with real historical characters, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying, yeah.
I think that's what I think. You definitely feel that it is very cognizant of Hamilton as a piece.
It definitely feels like there were execs when they pitched this to the boardroom. They were Hamilton, that was their only connection to a concept similar to this of we're putting popular a pop style in Yeah.
And it is crazy that this is Pasek and Paul's 2016 is La La Land, 2017 is when they win the Tonys for Dear Evan Hansen, and then this is at the end of this year is when this comes out. So it's they're on this crazy streak. And say what you want, Pasek and Paul, and say what you want about whatever you think of each of those properties individually, they're riding high and they're hot commodities.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think this is the one for me.
But you know what? $800 million worth of people did.
400.
Yeah.
490.
$400 million.
434.
I mean, I think for me, the reason that it ultimately worked in a totally intellectually disengaged level is that
disengaged intellectually.
No, but it keeps going, right? While it's a fairly long musical, the songs are fun and they keep it going, and
upbeat,
we're always cutting to a new scene.
Yeah.
And I just feel there's an element of whimsy to it. I was a little bit come on, the ending scene, he goes to the ballet with his family and he rides an elephant there, and I was sir, it is cold, and where is this elephant gonna go once you go inside the building?
We're gonna park it. He's just gonna park it in the taxi lot. Yeah.
And it was weird also because they kind of didn't really feature the animals until like the very end, and then I was like, oh yeah, animal abuse in circuses is also like a really big.
Just to like throw it,
was like a weird,
in there.
Yeah, it like reminded me at like a weird moment of that.
Yeah.
But like there is something also very fun about like he comes to the ballet on a elephant, right? He's like,
I am shocked that you are not addressing that this movie does not have a finale.
There was a finale. It was P.T. Barnum's motivational quote.
Yeah.
Does it not end on the...
No, it ends with him watching the ballet and like quietly singing from now on.
Oh, yeah. Oh. I thought they returned to the... Because they do return to the opening number.
Yes, in the circus, but he leaves the circus early after he gives the ceremonial hat to Zac Efron so he could watch her.
Yeah, I had put them in a different
other daughter
order
be a
in
tree.
my brain because that would have been such a better ending to actually end at the circus.
You're on such a high after first of all, an hour and 50 movie. So, I mean, by that alone, it's already in the top half of the movies that we watched.
I felt bad for the other daughter who didn't have anything to do.
She was a tree at the end.
She was a tree at the end, but I was like, why not just have one daughter then?
Yeah, why not have one daughter? I don't know.
I think they had 4 kids in total, so it's not like they were like, well, we have to be historically accurate. Like, just have one daughter.
I agreed.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I should have had a finale, but that seems like very much not the film's greatest problem. But yeah, I think that like
the greatest problem.
The greatest problem. This is me, the greatest problem.
That's the name of your your JSTOR published educational journal.
Yeah,
this
my
is
JSTOR article on this will be called "This Is Me, the Greatest Problem." You understand the naming conventions of academia, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I think ultimately, if you know that you've engaged with the problems of the movie, and so you try to not internalize some of its bad messaging about simplistic oppression or like not really portraying people with disabilities and all their complexities, and you just want to turn off your brain for an evening.
100%.
Oh, girl.
You can have a good time watching this movie.
There are worse movies you could pick.
There are very much worse movies that you could pick, both in an aesthetic sense and honestly even in like a
CGI
moral sense. No, I just mean like, well, I talked a lot about complex feelings about it. Like, you know what? It is a movie that has a diverse seeming cast. I wish it were more actually diverse. It does tell a story that is important about the history of freak shows. Could have told a lot better, but like it does tell that story. I'm glad that they didn't say that's too like we're too afraid of getting canceled to like even dive into it. I don't know that they were empathetic enough people to like really think it through. I don't know if that's the headspace they were coming from, but I'm glad that they went for it. And you know, there's fun stuff in it. So
yeah.
I will say, if I'm gonna list my things that are positive about this movie, this movie is only an hour and 45 minutes long, which for a movie musical is like on the fairly short side. It is paced really well. I actually might go back into the negative and say it's paced too quickly, but yeah, it's like it does not. There is no slow part of this movie. There is no part where you're like, well, this scene's gone on a while.
The musical numbers are shot well, presented very well. You can tell he does music videos. Like, he understands kind of visualizing, like, even in Rewrite the Stars, he understood how to visualize the music into the world that they lived in. So
the dance, I think the choreography's good.
I will say, I hope this finally puts to bed the years, and Molly, it's been years since people have been asking, like, because I think Adam has peppered it in just normal conversation or in, you know, in our other podcasts of how he hates this movie, but like never fully goes into why. And I think now we have it documented. So if anyone ever is like, I don't understand why you didn't like The Greatest Showman.
I think, RJ, you've set us up perfectly for closing the discussion of the movie to ask Adam. So what is it ultimately? You said you wanted to clarify in this conversation. Ultimately,
have
what
we
is
given you that answer?
Greatest flaw?
Yes.
I think it's that it's telling the wrong story. I think that's my biggest problem with this movie. Because there are so many other stories that it includes as subplots that I think are more interesting than what is actually the main plot. That I'm like,
and has a
this
better
could be...
message, better
impact
and, like, of what it wants to do.
Yeah. So I guess from a purely like basic understanding of the elements of a movie, I would say the screenplay is the biggest problem I have with this movie. I think that is the number one problem. So, critics had some interesting opinions about this movie. By the way, I just celebrated my 30th birthday by watching this movie.
Happy birthday!
Yeah.
Adam is currently listening to this episode on the pod, crying, eating 3 pints of Jenny's ice cream, I'm sure. That he's over the hill.
Over halfway done with your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, here. Keep going, girl. You're almost done.
This movie has a 57% on Rotten Tomatoes. Jason Zinnemann from the New York Times, quote, an amusement park version of P.T. Barnum is fine as far as that goes, but if you're going to aim for family-friendly fun, you need to get the fun part right.
Gosh, I disagree with every part of that.
Is fine. P.T. Barnum's life is fine. It's fine if you want to do that.
Yeah, I disagree that you should do a fun version of P.T. Barnum. Also, I disagree that there's no fun in the movie. He got the opposite problems.
I think it's just fun.
It was opposite day when he wrote the review. David Rooney from The Hollywood Reporter says, the sawdust and sequins are laid on thick, the period flashbulbs pop, and the champagne flows in The Greatest Showman. Yet this ersatz portrait of American big top tent impresario P.T. Barnum is all smoke and mirrors, no substance.
Well, that's kind of what the movie's about, so.
Yeah. You nailed it. Critics, am I right? And then Richard Lawson from Vanity Fair said, all my general affection for musical trying to make it in the world can't quite cover up the stink of what I think is lying at the heart of this film. So
that's probably the closest of how I felt after this movie, of like, I think I just can't shake up the stink they're trying to cover. Not even if they're trying, if it was a, conscious decision to cover that up or not. But
yeah, it's probably too meta to give it credit for, like, the fact that there's no substance to it is the point, because that's what Barnum was all. Yeah.
That's us giving them a better.
That was my relationship with Pasek and Paul with Dear Evan Hansen, where I originally thought they wrote a much better
and you were like,
version of it.
I was wrong. That was just a fabricated movie in my mind.
So on Letterboxd, Patrick Willems gives it 2.5 stars and said, I watched this movie while drinking heavily, and by the end it beat me into submission, and I cheered when Zac Efron put on a hat. Sri gave it 2.5 stars as well and said, this movie is complete cheese and I'm lactose intolerant. And Robert also gave it 2.5 stars. Everybody, 2.5 stars. Robert gave it 2.5 stars and said, I hate that I knew this was really bad, but my brain still got a tiny rush from the silly generic top 40-ish songs. Somehow I blame Glee.
The Glee generation.
Yeah. What if it isn't Gen Z, but it's Gen Gleek? No, I guess they're too young still. That's really young millennials.
Glee generation was such a
a short period of time.
What was that,
6 seasons?
Are we in the Glee generation then?
Technically, we are in the Glee generation. I just stopped watching after season 1.
I stopped after season 2.
I stopped after the Rocky Horror Picture Show Halloween episode that we all watched with our learning community freshman year.
I remember that because I remember Sam being Rocky.
Quinn Fabray got hit by a car, and I was like, and I'm out. I'm done, and I'm not gonna look back. And I didn't. I never watched it again.
You'll never regret the day you stop watching Glee. I forgot to write the closer again, but I thought of one while you were reading the review.
Well, yeah, she was.
That's really why I'm usually really quiet when you do the reviews, because about 75% of the time I forgot the closer and I'm thinking about it. You must select a very problematic historical figure to make a pop musical about. We will assume that you are competent writers who will do a better job of exploring the complexities of the character. But what is the most controversial historical figure you could think of to make a pop musical about?
Al Capone.
Oh.
I mean, is he really controversial though in 2022? Sorry, I forgot what year it was.
I mean, he did have
What year
people
is this?
killed, so it's not like a great look.
But
you know
as
what I mean?
we learned in Guys and Dolls, we've really romanticized the 30s gangster. So like,
That's true. It's too easy, Adam.
That's
that's
pick.
good. I mean, also Adam
Okay.
is, Chicago. We live right
Chicago.
by the St. Valentine's Day Massacre spot, so he feels a spiritual connection.
I feel that on the Chicago thing, I want to do H.H. Holmes.
Oh.
He was, Devil in the White City. People are interested in the story. And I feel like a bit more serial murder in musicals is like never a bad choice.
Yeah.
So I'd like an H.H. Holmes musical, please.
Honestly,
it's giving
what's
me
smart
like
about
Jekyll and Hyde.
Well, what's smart about like Sweeney and Jekyll and Hyde is like they're fictional, so it's at least it's like, well, it's not real. But like this is like the first one where it's like, no, we're gonna celebrate.
I didn't say we're celebrating him. I just said we're making a musical about him. I'm thinking the tone is more like Heathers meets Assassins. The H.H. Holmes musical.
Like we're showing what he did to make you think like what drove a person to this.
Adam saying, "Oh my God," is his reaction to how brilliant I am and how perfect this musical is.
When the line "fuck me with a chainsaw" happens, it's really about someone being murdered and getting fucked with a chainsaw. That's a Heather's reference.
She's already.
Fuck me gently
we're
with a
already
chainsaw.
picturing. We're already picturing the Mary Zimmerman-esque, production of this.
I would say
Gosh, that'd be
here's what
directing.
I want to clarify about my Capone thing. I think
Adam is holding his wine glass so close to his camera.
I think the Capone thing could be interesting because we have fully 180'd from our as Americans, we have fully 180'd from the teetotaler Prohibition era, which is when he became who he was basically because of the underground kind of alcohol thing,
Prohibition,
organized crime. So I think that could be interesting too, of being contextualizing that it was was America making the right decision and banning alcohol?
I also like the idea of pre-problematizing Al Capone, making people acknowledge the fact that he was not a cute, fun criminal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a book when I was little. It was called Al Capone Does My Laundry, and it was about a boy who lives on Alcatraz with his his parents live on the island as guards, and Al Capone does his laundry.
Al Capone musical set in Alcatraz.
There you go.
Yeah.
Honestly, just turn Alcatraz Does
the
My
musical.
Laundry.
Alcatraz the musical.
Yeah.
Cell Block Tango 2.0, baby.
Yes.
But just men.
Just men.
Yeah.
Chicago, but men.
When I saw Chicago, I was like, what this needs? Men.
Cell Block Samba. Cell Block Viennese Wolves.
Cell Block Boot Scoot and Boogie.
Jesus.
Cell Block Shapoopy.
Oh yeah.
Shawoki.
Shawoki.
Do you know this, Mark? That they redid for the revival. They wrote new lyrics.
They rewrote Shapoopy.
I haven't listened to Shapoopy in a while. What's wrong with the lyrics?
It's about going after a girl even when she says no.
Oh, okay, yeah. You gotta tweak it at least for sure.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre change in terms of like it's a song that literally is like about nothing because it's just song in order to like have a number. But okay.
They should have just redone it where it's just all sounds. Because like that's all the only thing I remember from the song is shapoopy, shapoopy, shapoopy. And it should just be like
the girl who's hard to get.
I'm flying a shapoopy. That'd be equally good.
We gotta do the Music Man again.
Ooh. Arj, you gotta pick your historical problematic figure.
There is a Music Man we haven't done actually. We didn't do the
Kristen Chenoweth one. The TV one.
Yeah.
I think I'll stay with the group and stick with a Chicago problematic fave. Fave isn't the right word.
Lori Lightfoot, the musical.
Well, I was gonna say like I think you could go the Rahm Emanuel route, right? And just give me a rom pop rock musical.
That's a deep cut for most people, and it's gonna be Hamilton levels of political
exactly. Or go even a deeper cut and do like a Heady Vice Chicago Sun-Times.
Oh, wow.
What's the name of the guy? Chris
Jones.
Chris Jones. Like do like a war paint type movie musical.
Wow. That would be
so
the most
niche. Yeah.
That is like Chicago Fringe Festival 60-minute musical at like, Red Twist Theater or something like that.
What's the tone? Give me the X meets Y of like what's the Jones v. Vice
give me your elevator pitch.
Yeah.
The pitch. I mean, I'm curious what like I think it makes sense to be like a pastiche musical at least where it's like different styles of musicals.
Okay, but what's the plot?
I think just like the downfall of Hetty.
Of Hetty from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yeah.
What's its greatest influence? Like what musical should I be picturing in terms of the tone?
I mean, I'm thinking of War Paint with Patti LuPone and Christine Ebersole, but that musical didn't really do well.
Yeah, I don't know any of the songs from it. Sorry.
It's a real Les Mis, Javert, Jean Valjean situation.
Okay, I'm down for a Les Mis scale.
Either that or like an Evita. Like, I feel like an Evita type where it's like, should I be cheering for her?
I love the idea of like the most niche topic, but then make it like the biggest scale possibly could. We're at opera levels of melodrama here about two Chicago theater critics.
I also want to be clear, none of us are going to do the Wicked route and we're going to like make them like a good person.
Friends. No.
You have
embrace
to
the flaws.
Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
The way that this musical should have, we will embrace the flaws of all of our characters.
Elphaba tried to set people on fire, and you should never forget that. And we should never forgive that.
I mean, they're not real people, so I don't really care what they want to treat them as, but I'm not offended by Wicked, like redeeming the Wicked Witch of the West. She's not a real person.
Well. Okay, that's it. I don't have anything else.
Shapoopy, shapoopy, shapoopy.
Thank you for listening to the best revival of a podcast, Showgays. You can find us on social media. Adam is at Adam Noecker on Twitter. RJ is at RJ Food Rocks on Instagram. And Molly is at Molly Matiny on Instagram. This episode was edited and mixed by Adam Noecker. This has been an Ampliverse production. You can find our show page and more information at theampliverse.com. If you'd like to send us your own takes on the movie we just watched, reach out to us via email and we might read it aloud on the show. Our email is showgaysmoviemusical@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to help others find the show. And now, as always, the show must go on, so stick around to hear what we're going to be watching next episode.
The sun will come out tomorrow, so you gotta hang on till tomorrow.
In today's troubled world, it's nice to know there's still someone you can count on.
All right, who's next?
Annie. It's the rags to riches story everyone knows. It's the songs everyone loves. It's the movie everyone's waiting for. It's Annie.
It's the hard knock life for us. It's the hard knock life for us. Stand treated, we get tricks. Stand kisses, we get hicks. It's the hard knock life.
Where's Annie?
He had to go bathroom.
She had to go bathroom.
Little girls, everywhere I turn, I can see them.
Annie, how would you like to spend a week with Mr. Warbucks at his house?
Oliver Warbucks, the millionaire?
Oh, no, Oliver Warbucks, the billionaire.
Leaping lizards.
The swimming pool is down the stairs.
Inside the house? Oh, boy.
The tennis court is in the rear.
I never even picked up a racket. I think I'm gonna like it here.
I'm a businessman. I love money, I love power, I love capitalism. I do not now and never will love children.
Blow it out your old wazoo.
No! I might learn to like her. Hang out in my bathroom.
Oh, my goodness.
I want to talk to you about Annie. I want to adopt her.
Annie, starring Albert Finney as Daddy Warbucks.
I love you, Daddy Warbucks. I don't need sunshine now to turn my skies to blue.
I don't need anything but you.
Carol Burnett as Miss Hannigan.
We love you, Miss Hannigan.
Shut up.
Bernadette Peters and Tim Curry as the kidnappers.
Oh, sir, we're just so thrilled to have found Annie.
Easy Street. Easy Street.
Easy Street.
Annie is the key.
Yes,
Yes, sirree.
We got Annie.
Anne Reinking as Miss Farrell.
We got Annie.
We got Annie. We've got Annie.
Jeffrey Holder as Punjab. Edward Herman as FDR.
Be proud to be Americans.
That's a swell idea.
Sandy as himself. And introducing Aileen Quinn
Leaping lizards.
as Annie.
I didn't want to be just another orphan, Mr. Warbucks. I wanted to believe I was special.
You are special. Never stop believing that.
She's the child in all of us. She'll put a song in your heart and a smile on your face. She's Annie.
Discovering voices. Building worlds. The Ampliverse.